Right, great. Hopefully that's working now. Hello and welcome. Today we're getting this thing ready for going out tomorrow. On the previous live stream, I converted it to use a servo over axle mount, and then I did a little bit of work off camera to get that thing absolutely slammed in the frame. The whole crawler sitting probably 10mm lower on the skid, which allowed me to take my pen spring mod out, because now that the belly's lower, I've got a bit of extra articulation, which should help out quite significantly. But that's not the thing that I'm really focusing on today, although it is on this truck. I need to drill out my shell, because the change in width of body posts has meant I've had to do the fiberglass and super glue trick, which is a video on the channel. But today it's all about this crazy thing, which is my prototype skid. Phone's going crazy. And also my prototype wheels. So I'm going to switch to a different view. Hopefully this will work. And we'll just take a quick look. Now my workbench is a complete mess. Didn't get a chance to clean it up, so let's go. Right. So we have got a prototype wheel, which is deliberately printed using a large fibre because I wanted that kind of curly effect. So it's used a really big nozzle, and then a prototype skid for the scattergun, which pushes the axle all the way over to the left when you're looking at the crawler from the front. The idea is to try and mount the motor over here and get the motor really low. Now that does mean that the spur will be in a weird place and the output shaft might be in a very weird place, but we'll find out if that's going to work or not, because what I want to do is be able to drop both the motor and the gearbox. There's no reinforcements on it yet, so it's literally got the posts to mount the gearbox on, some mounting holes on the side, which, because I've used PETG, they're a bit sort of gummied up and glued, and then this bar. And this bar is where I'm going to mark motor positions relative to the spur, so I can calculate a hole to kind of put an adjustable motor mount in, or I might end up flipping the whole thing upside down. But yeah, let's have a look at these wheels. So I'm running these SSD wheels. These are my standard ones, and they weigh, including hairbun foams and tyres, they weigh 190.3 grams, and these 3D printed wheels are 136.7, depending on which one you pick. They seem to range slightly, not too badly actually, 135. So I'm dropping about 55 grams off the wheel. I wanted to drop 60 grams off the wheel, but we didn't quite get there. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Now, I've done these wheels 30mm wide and then 2mm bigger on the face, which makes them a 1.9 XL. They're not quite a 2.2, although compared to a compared to a normal wheel, they do look a bit bigger, but that's also because the normal wheel is black, and because they're so wide, they make the sidewall a little bit straighter. So if we compare the width, the inner ring for this is 30mm, whereas the inner ring for this is 25mm. So it's the same tyre, but it looks a whole lot wider and a whole lot flatter on here. So I'm hoping, even though these flatten down, I'm hoping that extra width is extra grip. And also because these have got like a big rolled in sidewall, because they're not so wide, because these are wider, the sidewall's pushed up a bit higher. So I'm hoping there's a bit more sidewall support there. Not that these struggle, contrary to certain people's opinion. These do flex, but the foams do hold on quite well. but these ones, they've got a really quite stiff sidewall. So yeah, so I'm going to try and get those fitted. I keep looking over to my laptop just to see what's going on. Yeah, Big Island Crawler said he's never tried 3D printing wheels before. Neither have I. So this is an experiment, and I've done the unthinkable and printed them in PLA, which is said to be extremely brittle. But there's quite a bit of thought gone into the structure, not necessarily the design. The design's just a lazy hexagon, and then there's 5 spokes. It's quite simple. But the hub design has a donut ring to reinforce it. The way that the spokes get printed and the way that the wheels work is, and I will be doing more on these if they actually turn out to be any good. The wheels have holes. That black that you can see at the end of my finger, that black there is actually the hair bun, so they're completely open. So they will only work with a closed cell foam or a hair bun, because the hair bun's just plastic. It's hygroscopic. But the way this works is the slicing of this, there's a rib that runs up and down, and then these are circular. What happens is the printer runs along, round this rib, all the way around the outside and back again. So providing that the layer adhesion's quite good, what it's done is created long strands of filament that have gone on. So the only problems I might have, oh, battery for tomorrow is ready. The only real problems I'll have will be if the threads that run up and down, because this is printed side to side, if they separate and the wheel splits along that way. So that'll be interesting. They're because they're 30mm wide, they're the equivalent of probably a 7mm offset as well. But the reason for that is I put on some cheap Chinese wheel extenders, and so what I've designed into the hub is a really quite thin face on the hub. So instead of using the terrible hardware that they gave me, which are these bolts that have split, I can use the standard TRX nuts. Printing wheels, dimensional accuracy for the hub is really important. I sized the hub at 12.2mm, and it just fits. So we're going to pop one of these on. That fits like a glove, and I'm going to dig out some washers off my rather messy desk. Actually no, these are flared nuts, yeah. So I'm going to pop one of the Traxxas nuts on and just see if that will actually tighten. And yeah, there's not enough thread on there, so I'm going to have to use those terrible ones that they've given me. And because they've flared slightly, it's going to be an interesting fit. So I'm going to try and get this through the hole. I might have to just squash it shut a bit. So the wheel extenders have like hollow bolts that go on to the stub of the axle that's stuck out, but for some reason they've flared and split at the end, so they're not the best. But they're on there, and I don't want to take them off because they're a pain to get on, and that's really disappointing because of how much they've flared. They went into the SSDs really easily because the SSDs have this oversized hole, but in a standard 5mm hole, that's not going to go back through without a bit of a fight. So just going to give it a good squeeze and then probably pop another battery on and then try and get these onto the truck. I would get a close-up of this, but it's not easy to hold a phone and a wheel and a nut and do the work. So we'll see if we can get this on. It might be that I have to go back to traditional hexes, which will be fun because one of the bolts rounded off. Right. In the meantime, I'm just going to pop another battery on charge. remember to turn my charger down as well, because these just tiny little 1000 milliamp batteries, and I'm sure they don't want to be charged at 10 amps. Right, great, that's charging. Yeah, so I sized the holes to 5mm. I might have to either drill them or struggle with these. I'm going to get my calipers out and just check the size of these weird bolt things that they've given me. Yeah, so they're 4.83 apart from where they've flared, which is 5.5mm. So that's why they're not fitting through, because I've created 5mm holes. What can I do? I can probably grab a reamer and see if I can just ream a bit of a hole through the PLA, because I really want to test these wheels tomorrow. The other thing I've done when I've printed these, if you're into 3D printing, is printed them with a concentric design, and that concentric design makes sure, just turn my heater down, that's a bit warm. The concentric design ensures that you can ream them out because they're rings of filament, and so it's easy to make holes in them. The alternative to this will be to drill them, but that's my last resort, because I want to just try and squeeze the bolts through if I can. It's not the easiest fit. The other thing is PLA is relatively soft if you print it right, so I might just be able to force the bolt through. A little bit of pressure. There we go. So that is now on. And hopefully the rest aren't going to give me such a hard time. Right, great. We're in business. So we have one 3D printed wheel on the crawler. Now I think I can get away with these because I've got the punch control dialed right down on this truck, and it starts unbelievably slowly. It's a real actual bona fide crawler. It really does just crawl along, which is great, and it doesn't need to go very fast, because with these wheels we're going to be chopping 200 grams off. With the change to a, you know what, that piece has just sheared off completely. Not even sure it's worth having. With the change to the forelink as well, that shaved off another 50 grams because I weighed everything up, like the panhard mount and the spacers and the hardware, you know, offset by the extra link, you would have thought, but yeah. Oh, that's not ideal. If you're going to buy a spacing kit for a TRX, try and make sure that you don't buy the cheapest one that has no stub axle to deal with, because I can see why the better kits come with stub axles now. Right, hopefully that's through. Yeah, we've got a few fibers and threads. Don't need to worry too much about the holes, because the hexes do the work of centering the wheel. So if I push one of these through and the hole's not quite round, then it won't matter, because the hex will self-center. Although I need to get it all the way through. There we go. not ideal, but this truck doesn't go fast. It's geared to about 7 miles an hour, so I can live with it. The only challenge is, can I get this to actually screw on? Yep, that's biting. I think. Feels like it. Yep. Cool. Right, well. Oh, I see. There's a bit of slop, so we'll just keep going. Yeah, I'm gonna have to put some kind of washer in because, oh no, that one's gone tight. So why is this one not going tight? Yeah, that wheel's wobbly. So this, whatever this axle kit is, it's rubbish. Yeah, that's not gone tight at all. That one's lovely, but this one's just not sitting right. So we have to pop this off and try again. Just don't understand why it's having so much trouble. Yeah, it's almost like the nuts they've given me are just not long enough. That's very strange. Right, we'll pop that through. Yeah, I mean, hopefully people are still interested, but we'll just get through this bit as fast as possible. I'm just breaking off a little bit of this hollow nut that's just decided to split. It's made it a bit too hollow for my taste, but we'll live with it for now. I think these were designed for wheels that have a bit more of a hub on them. Get a little crush washer it comes with. Just drop everything on my leg. We'll get there. Right, we're on. I mean, the good news is the wheels are spaced really nicely. Oh, that one's actually a rattly hub. Oh, maybe my tolerances weren't that good. What can we do to solve that? Just going to test it with a normal hex. Not these weird wheel extendy ones. Right. So that hex feels nice and tight, but when it goes onto these cheap alloy ones, they seem to be a bit on the loose side. So I'm just trying to think how to fix that. Yeah, the hexes they've sent me are just slightly undersized. So hopefully I can apply enough pressure, but who knows. Yeah, there we go. Just needed an extra washer. That's nice and tight. That's nice and tight. Okay, I'll grab a box of washers to make sure I don't break any more of those. So let's do these rear ones. So I'm making sure, because I run these awesome Louise Rowdy tyres, I'll just make sure that they sit the right way round, because I have put them on the wrong way round before. And it will probably help if I cut out some of the extra sort of bits, strands of filament that have got left on there. It's the first time they've gone onto an actual axle. I've just been testing them with a hex that I pop in because the printer's inside my house, whereas I am not. This is another one that's got a bit spaced out. Try and squeeze that back together. Just go for a slightly bigger washer to get it on. Right, I'm just going to push this nut into the washer and then try and get it on. If you've got any questions, just chuck them in the live chat. And as before, I'm just going to have to force this nut through into the wheel. Somehow, probably by just squeezing the rounded bits back together enough that it'll go through. It's given me some confidence in how strong these wheels are though, because if I push all my weight on them and they're not cracking or creaking, then they're probably going to go all right on the rocks tomorrow. This truck is an absolute out and out crawl truck. It's not used for trail or anything like that, so low speed, high angle, climbing up silly stuff. Right, that's streamed that out a bit, so hopefully I can start to push that in a bit better. Cool. Great. That's made it through. It's not the best way to install wheel nuts. Right, that's nice and tight, there's no wiggling, so we can get the last one on and then start having a look at this skid if people are still around. Hopefully they're still around, hopefully I'm not too boring. I know it's a bit weird with the angles, so I'm going to work on better camera angles. I'm also going to drill out my shell in a bit as well, so that'll be interesting if you've never fitted a shell before. This is your chance to watch someone do it quite badly. I'm going to have to source some different hollow bolts as well from somewhere, because these are just shocking. Hopefully I can get some hardened ones from somewhere. As long as I can get a washer over. Yeah, that's great. and then try and push that into there. I'm trying to sort of stand it up and then bash it with the end of this socket, which seems to kind of work. Not on this one, this one's fighting back. So I'm just getting my reamer and just reaming out the hole in the centre. So yeah, I went out last week, didn't break anything, so I didn't bother tidying up in here because I wasn't doing any filming this week. It's all pre-filmed and just needs editing. And then the kids were being really cute when we put them to bed, so ended up spending more time than I would have, and really enjoyed it. So all the time I would have used to tidy this up ready for the live stream was spent doing important things like helping the kids learn to write and cheering them on when they can write. They're only still tiny. Right, here we go. So we have 3D printed wheels on this crawler. Now I'm going to start taking a look at the skid, but this thing is a lot wider. So those wheel extenders and then those 3D printed wheels have really widened this, and in fact I'm going to give it a little measure. Yeah, it's now about 270mm wide. Previously it was around about trying to remember, about 22, 23. But the great thing is these wheels, because the width of them brings the even though they've got a big offset, so they've got a 4mm offset, but it's a 30mm wide wheel, I've got less offset than my previous wheels, and they would have sat slightly wider, but like down the center line of these. So I've gained width on both sides of the tyre, which should give me some good steering. What I'm just going to check for now is whether they still rub on the chassis, and they do, which means I haven't lost any steering from when I did the previous changes. Rubs on the chassis because I've made the front really wide to let that servo drop in there. So I'm going to work on my steering angle and shocks and things another time. I want to drive it with the servo, because what it didn't used to do is when you picked it up, the front axle didn't drop as quickly as it does now, and that's because it's got that huge Holmes Hobbies servo on there. But tell me what you think about the wheels. They're a relatively simple design. I'm going to chuck it down now, try and get you a close-up shot. It's totally upside down. There we go. So they are on. Here's a SSD wheel for comparison. So yes, the ring is about 2mm wider in diameter, but it doesn't actually make the tyres too much higher. I think it does make them marginally higher. Certainly makes them a lot wider. So I'm really pleased with that. Sorry if you're seasick. There we go. So what I've got to do now, I've got to check the wheels for any wobble, because we don't want any wobble. That's great. They're all great. I've got a few wonky balls that need replacing, but I'm not going to bother with that for now. We're going to take a look at my new skid, and then after that, well, there's probably going to be a battery change halfway through because the small ones are on now. But yeah, I'm going to start talking about this. So I had an in the works skid on this truck, and I changed it to the bracing scale all-time low skid. And what I'm actually going to have to do, unfortunately, is unclip a few zip ties that are holding on my electronics and my receiver, but that's fine, because I want to pop this gearbox off, which will let me show off the skid a little bit. So I had to remember to bring all my tools back out from the house. I'm going to need my other MIP driver. Well, I can use that. So yeah, when I said this was a mess, I really meant it. Right, so I'm going to get this motor mount off first. So it's using a standard TRX4 motor mount, although actually it's an aluminium one, but standard as in standard shape. It's using a Holmes Hobbies revolver. So let's do the close-up again. So if you just joined, I'll happily go back to the 3D printed wheels and things, just give me a shout. So it's using a bracing scale time low skid, which puts the transmission in the standard TRX place with the standard TRX mount. One of the issues I have with it is, even though it's got this great opening to allow the axle to droop down, I had to clearance it to allow the axle to go up. And also the motor's quite high. So what I'm going to do is pop the gearbox off and offer it up to my new skid, and then put that skid onto one of the rails and then try and look at motor positions. So I'll just be a moment with that. It's not too hard, this one, it's only 3 bolts. And then we'll have a little chat about this skid. Now the skid's specific to the Northwest Scalar Designs rails, and I'll show you all why in a moment when I've just got these bolts off. Oh, it's another battery. Just be a moment, because as I'm sure you understand, I don't want to get to one of my favourite rock crawling places and then realise that I don't have enough batteries, even though I can only go there for an hour or two. Now, one thing I'm considering doing is chucking the wheels on the G500 and giving that a blast about for 10 minutes as well. G500's geared for about 30 mile an hour on a flat road, so it's got an Axe 550, 3300, 12 tooth pinion, 45 tooth spur on a TRX4 gearbox, 2-speed, running 3S, with the turbo timing 10 degrees, so it's got 10 degrees of timing in it. And it's got the acceleration level set to 9, which is the highest. So if anything's going to rip the hubs out the wheels, it's going to be that truck. And because I can print more, and I've got, you know, a couple of 100 meters of filament left, it will be interesting to see how that goes. Now, it's not to break them on purpose, it's just if rolling this off a few rocks doesn't cause a few problems, then that will. Right. 100mm shocks with a pen spring mod. I would wonder what the point is, because the spring will act as a travel limiter. So depending on the kind of spring that you use, it'll remove between 4 and 10mm of travel. So I did run a pen spring mod on 90mm shocks to stop it tipping back, and was climbing up about 68-70 degree stuff. I've just lowered the skid even more and taken the pen spring out because I've got the centre of gravity so low. If you ran really long shocks, you would be able to lay them right down and get a ridiculous amount of articulation, but you will suffer on super steep climbs. So it kind of depends on what you're doing. You'll also find side hills as well will be a bit interesting because the body will roll over a lot. But yeah, if you're after articulation, yeah, 100mm shocks. Don't bother with the pen springs. Don't like the pen springs are there to limit the articulation on trucks that have got too long a shock. If you're increasing the shock, just skip the pen springs. Right, we're going to pop this out, hopefully, if I remember what I'm doing. I think it's a drive shaft off job. Well, no, I want that end. Let me just get the other end. If anyone's interested in how I've managed to lower this truck so much, it's the GPM adjustable link mounts. On the front it's a replacement C-hub, and on the back it's a replacement link mount. Sorry, it's on both of them. It's the hubs, and the hubs have 5 holes, starting with the starting with the highest being about equivalent to your normal shock height, and then you can drop it by I think it's about another 10 to 15mm. That really lowers the skid, and then you can run long shocks and have articulation, but you've got really low skid. Yeah, if I put them on the G500, they'll blow up. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the G500 so far has, with the axe system, managed to blow the SSDs off, tyres off, and my G-Mades, it's managed to blow the tyres off on the G-Made bead locks. And nothing that I've ever owned up until now has managed to do that, so that was interesting. I'm going to get this rear axle, front axle off as well. Yeah, the G500 as well, if you if you're off-road and you reverse a little bit and then blast it forwards, it will do a wheelie. If you're on a road, a grippy surface, it'll try and do a standing backflip. Now, because it's got a big square body and it's not quite going fast enough, it does more of a standing, you know, land on its roof, make you look stupid thing. So that's interesting. Oh, just got to wiggle this gearbox enough to get it out. Maybe I should have taken the shaft off and popped it back on. Yeah, I'll do that. Now, the reason for taking this gearbox out is to start measuring up motor mounting options, but also checking drive shaft clearance and other things. So we'll go back into the close view in a moment. Just, yeah. So let's have a quick look at the brazing scale. So if you're running a scattergun or a brazing scale truck, highly recommend this skid. Ignore the sheep dirt or whatever's on there from Little Arms Cliff. So this is essentially it's a TRX4 bolt-in option with the hole that I've forgotten that holds your transmission on, I think. Yep, never mind about that, don't need that anymore. And I'll just add that to my CAD design. It's got a nice space for your spur to go and an open spur design, and it's a pretty good skid. It's probably my favourite for the scattergun. What I did do is, because it's axial holes, it's got one hole at the front and one hole at the back. I just drilled an 8mm long hole in it, and because it's from Shapeways and it's 3D printed using SLS, which is like powder that's melted by a laser, It's just drilled absolutely fine. So Shapeways 3D printed parts you can generally chop up. So, moment of truth. My skid, a transmission. Have I got the bolt pattern right? And it looks like I might have actually. Yeah, the rear ones are together. Sorry, it's hard holding a phone and trying to rest all of this on. Yeah, so there's some lumps and bumps in the chassis. In fact, I'll switch back to the front one. Oh, that was a bit wobbly. So there's some lumps and bumps in the chassis that are stopping it from bolting in directly, but I think, yeah, I have managed to, if I get this mounted up correctly, that and that, and does that one, yeah, I've actually managed to measure it, and so the skid is a goer. Now, I did think that I had this mounted a bit too high and I could go a bit lower, and I think that's what I'm going to do. So I think I'm going to cut some out of the extrusion, but I also need to shift this across. So we'll go back to this wibbly wobbly view. So on a normal skid, let me see if I've got a mount here. This will make things easier. Oh, sorry about the wobbly camera work. There we go. Right, so on a normal TRX skid, your transmission would be about there, and then you would have your motor housing. In fact, it would be about there, yeah. You would have your motor housing here, but then you've got this axle in the way. This is really heavy. In fact, it's 2.5 times the weight of a revolver. So a revolver snub nose. So the in the works skid moves it right across to about here, and then brings the motor down to here, which is great. But then when you get a really low truck, you start bashing this axle on your motor, because your motor's like here, and then you can't slam your truck because you're bashing about. My plan, and it still might be my plan, we'll see how this bolts into some rails. My plan is to run this as close as possible to the edge, and I think I'm not a million miles out, because the skid actually mounts in there. Yeah, it's going to be fine. I might have to clearance this little tab off, this one here, but that's fine. So the idea is to run this so far over that, you know what, it would make sense at this point to actually chuck a bolt in, and then I won't be wobbling around so much. So let me see if we can get that done. And this is where we find out I've made my holes not big enough or too big or something else. Come on. You know what? Yeah, I've not made the holes quite big enough, and I've not made the stands quite big enough, so that's not going to hold. So I'm just going to have to keep holding it on. Okay, so that kind of like hooks on, and that hooks on. So if I put that down there, try and get a bit more light, then the scattergun chassis goes on there, and what happens is this hole mounts into the skid there, which I've got a hole for, and this cross member has a hole in it which lines up with my hex driver, hopefully. Yeah, there we go. Then that sits on there, somehow. There we go. That's holding together. And then the skid sits inside of the chassis. Now, with my measurements and looking at the holes I've printed, and again this is quite hard to do while also filming, hopefully I've got the right place for the hole. I think I'm off. No, I'm not off. Let's see. Stuff that through. Yeah, so the chassis, so the skid is slightly angled as well. I might tolerance this out. The skid's slightly more angled as well, so the rails will scrape before the skid, but that's got an angle on it. So that'll be interesting. So I guess let's have a look at potential motor positions if I can get this thing to stay still on these holes. So that's where the transmission's going to be. There are rails each side. Now I was hoping to bolt these up, but because I printed it on a draft setting, they're probably not going to bolt in. Now I was hoping that I would be able to mount a motor just there. It's very close, but it's not a million miles away. But I was trying to see how low I can get this motor before it interferes. Now, one of the things that it will interfere with is the upper hole that I put my links in. So that's going to be interesting. So it might be that the motor does need to sit a bit higher. Maybe it needs to sit about there. And if it's sat about there, your links can go quite high. It's probably best to show on my scattergun. So I've got a revolver, snub nose, and that revolver snub nose sits quite high, and these links don't cause a problem. But because of the amount of lowness I've got on my truck, those links can sit quite high in the chassis because the skid can go super low, stupidly low actually. So now I've got to try and work out where I can physically put a motor. So my other option, which is slightly crazy, is where have I put my skid? So this skid moves my transmission forwards, I think, compared to a normal one. So mine is going to be about there, which is actually slightly further forwards. Yeah. So what I'm kind of thinking is I can actually move the transmission probably forwards by about another 5 to 10 mil. And what we've got to remember is the transmission weighs more than my revolver. Sorry, my throat's getting a bit dry. And because the transmission weighs more than my revolver, my other option is to mount the motor on the inboard side, because then instead of having a motor high up and bashing on my links and getting in the way of my drive shafts, I can run my motor to the side, and that would not work because I'd need to run a massive pinion. What a silly idea. What an absolutely silly idea. But this is why I'm doing this, is I'm trying to work out with a motor how this could work. So that's why we tend to put our motors on the front, because it meshes in that way. I could swap to like an axial spur and run a bigger pinion. But yeah. So maybe I do want my motor here. Maybe I'll just shift the transmission forwards, but I wanted my motor nice and low, but then I've got to look at where my drive shafts would go. So if I'm looking at my scattergun, my drive shaft can reach nearly up to, just connect it on. Oh, isn't this fun? Come on. Everything on here is so specific and has to go in the right order. Right. So my drive shaft angle, you can see is my drive shaft's actually facing up, my links are facing up, everything's pointing right up. So yeah, I can't get the motor as low as I'd want to, and that's probably why the In The Works one runs with a smaller pinion spur gear. So that would be the lowest I could have my motor. But again, it's like the motor weight is not a huge concern here. But yeah, I could get the motor lower, definitely. It would preclude people from running anything bigger than, say, a large outrunner. But it is my design for me, so I guess that's not too much of an issue right now. Yeah, tell me what you think in the chat. It's a challenge, that one. And also this brazing one, they've got the transmission really, really, really low. I'm just trying to think, you know, do I just bring the transmission further forwards and then use the standard TRX mounting? So yeah, if I have a look where that's actually mounted, yeah, this is bringing my transmission forward by a small amount. It's only about 5 mil at the moment, but I can bring it further than that. I was really hoping or gambling on running the motor much closer. And in fact, the brazing one, they've got the transmission super low. I'm quite impressed by that. But yeah, the downside of running the motor that way is yeah, bashing on links and axles and other things. What an interesting challenge. At least this didn't take too long to print, not like James's ladders that all exploded when I did them. And the annoying thing is, the ladders were all done 100% infill, and this is not. This is hollow, and it's not snapped like the ladders did. It is starting to separate, but it's not too bad. Yeah. Please bear with me as I try and think about my next steps. So I could in theory bring the transmission a lot closer with this design. So I think bringing the transmission forward's good, and then I think I'm going to Yeah, that's going to start chewing on my link mounts. Yeah, there's not a huge amount of scope for bringing it too far forwards. It's just a tiny bit. I'm not sure it's worth the effort, but it was fun to print things out and test. Now I've just got to work out, oh, they're both the same length, those stubs. Right, I'm going to pop all of this back, so I'm going to swap to the other one because I want to move the camera. Oh. Right, well I guess it's just charging batteries and sorting out shells. I'm just going to get these drive shafts back in. Some people go to the effort of cocking their drive shafts. I generally don't because I'm lazy and it doesn't seem to affect me. I'll start getting the motor bolted in because it's a live stream, and the first thing I do is flip it over and the motor will fall out. So let's get that sorted. Oh. So the wheels look good. I'll probably give them a good test tomorrow, and then if they survive a few runs out, I mean they're only on this thing, and this, now it's getting into winter, doesn't have many opportunities to be used. Tomorrow does look dry-ish, so it might get used tomorrow. Well, it is definitely getting used tomorrow. So it might be a while before I can test it fully. I'm looking for my transmission cover. But it will get tested, and if they stand up, I will do a video on the wheels and release the STL files, because while I would love to sell them to people, most people who are going to buy them are probably in America, and I'm in the UK, and that's a pain in the arse with the shipping and COVID and everything else. So I might chuck them on Shapeways actually, which means that you can get them printed. I don't know if I make any money out of them. It's not about making money, but you know, if you want to donate any money to some 3D printed wheels, then knock yourselves out. My plan with the design was to try and get them under 20 grams. Now, because they're in a 1.9 XL size, they come in at my brain's not working today. They came in at 25 grams, which isn't too bad, because I printed them quickly using a thick filament, and they are about 2 mil, maybe 3 mil too wide in size diameter. So if I shrink that down and print them with a finer material and a bit more patience, they would probably be stronger and about 2 or 3 grams lighter. For the inner wheel and the rings, not too sure. Right. Oh dear, my Wi-Fi just restarted. Hopefully it's coming back. Right, so transmission's going back in. We've got these annoying little pins that need to go back on. There we go. How's that battery doing? 12.58 volts. That's nearly there. So yeah, 3D printed wheels took 200 grams off the truck. That's good. 200 grams is not to be sniffed at. The next one is, well, it was going to be the skid. I know that if I did design my own skid it would be slightly lighter, but seeing as we're only talking about 10 or 15 grams, there's other areas that I want to start looking at. Now, I can get these chassis rails in aluminium if I ask really nicely, but I'm not sure I'm that bothered. I'm happy with the steel rails. What I am going to look at though is 3D printed links, because I do have a habit of destroying links, and I have gone back to my aluminium links, which will be interesting. And yeah, going on a bit of a 3D printing frenzy. Before I do 3D printed links though, what I'm probably going to look at is the standoffs. So I've got aluminium standoffs here, and actually I might do some specific hollowed out support structures. I've also put on my eddy winch, so I'll have to chop my body to fit that on. Yep, great, that's all back on. Wheels are on, we'll give it a bit of a smash about. Not hearing any cracks as yet. Dropped a bolt on me, that made me jump. Yeah, let's go, let's do a shell. Right, so I've got a reamer tool, and it is rubbish, and you can use that for your shell, but you are there for ages. If you've already smashed up your shell and then repaired it, video on the channel with fiberglass and glue, and you've already got big holes and bits of glue sticking out, then what I'm going to do is just measure it up and then just drill it. I'm going to use a 6mm wood drill bit that's got a bit of Lexan on it from when I drilled it last time. Standard drill, nothing special. And yeah, so I think the skid is going on hold for a bit. Is there anything I want to change before I start drilling and screwing? Yes, there is. I want to put some tension in the frame, so I'm going to use a standard bumper, and I'm going to pop it on the back. And what that's going to do is just apply tension throughout the frame without bending anything. When you put the bends in the middle of the frame, it all gets a bit wibbly wobbly. So I've made the frame 80mm, well, 80mm in the centre, 82 at the front, 78 right at the front, so it kind of curves, and then at the end I'm just going to put a standard bumper on, which I think is, I think it's 72mm, couldn't be for sure, but that'll put, you know, sideways tension on everything. There's me dropping bolts everywhere, and just, you know, give a bit of impact resistance. It's not my night. Right, what have we got? Just need the medium-ish ones. They're too long. I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4. And then yeah, we'll fit a shell. If you got notified that there's a live stream because you're a recent subscriber, thank you for subscribing. And if you're an existing subscriber and you've been watching for a while, thank you as well. The suspension video that I did recently seemed to get quite, you know, nice feedback. So yeah, so there's some more like that coming soon. The next one's about damping, and then I've recorded the intro and most of the overdubbing of the beginners one about climbing over square edge stuff. Okay, cool. Right, that's putting some nice tension in. It's also giving me a bit more frame clearance. Next battery. Right, that's charging. Right, so I need to zip tie a few bits back on because I will completely forget. So I'll do that before I forget. Here we go. So yeah, the skid is, I think that idea is going to go on hold for a little bit. There's very little improvement to be had over the one that I've already got, which, you know, isn't a bad thing to find out. That's quite cool to find that that's something I don't have to spend any time thinking or pontificating about. So I just zip tie receivers on really badly in this case. I'll do that properly. And wires and things, you know, it's the lightest weight option that I've found. Also lost my Lexan scissors. Here we go. Or at the moment they are my zip tie scissors. They haven't cut any Lexan for a while. That's probably going to change in the next few minutes because we want to make some space for the eddy winch to do its thing. Now, I haven't reviewed the eddy winch yet because I haven't had a truck that I can fit it on. It is only zip tied to this truck because I don't have, well, I mean, I've got a servo winch bumper, but I didn't want to run it because it wasn't wide enough. So I will look into how I can mount it a bit more permanently. But seeing as this thing's now dropped to about 2.5 kilos, I'm pretty happy. The day I'll be really happy is when I can weigh it with this scale and that scale weighs up to 2 kilos. Unfortunately, the truck on the scale, oh, maybe I can hold the scale up somehow. There we go. That might give us a semi-accurate reading. Yeah, so yeah, it goes to error. So it's over 2 kilos, but I don't know how far over 2 kilos. I know the shell's 200 grams and the battery is 100 grams, so we're probably about 200 to 300 grams over what the scales can manage. So if I did get lighter rails, that might help. Let's do a body. Here's a really simple way to find out where to drill your body. Get some Loctite. Oh, I've just realised I've got a body post that won't stay up. I'll tell you what, I'll fix that body post first and then we'll do the simple trick. I was hoping I had a self-tapping screw somewhere. No. What have I got? Need something smallish. That might work. Oh, it's actually already got something in there. It's just not. There we go. Not biting in. There we go. That's great. That's bitten in now. Bitten in a bit too tight. Got a wonky wobbly body post though. Why are you? Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear. That body post does not want to stick on, so we are going to bodge it and put some impact glue in. Just glue it on, because it's a body post and it's going to get broken off at some point anyway. Although I am significantly less harsh on this truck than I have been in the past. This started as a sport that just got thrown at everything at full speed, and has evolved pretty rapidly over the last 4 or 5 months of ownership. But it does everything I want it to do, and I really enjoy it, so you know, why not? Alright, just trying to get these bolts to bite in. They're kind of half glued, half twisted in. There we go. No, they are being rubbish. I need to find a better way to mount that. Because without body posts, it's going to be quite hard to do the next bit. Let me see if I can put the shortest ones on. Trying the heat trick, which is just to spin the bolt until it gets hot enough that it melts the plastic and just sticks in. No, that didn't work either. Right, I'll have to drill a tiny hole drill a tiny pilot hole, get those on, and then we'll do the body. There we go. There we go. Right, they're biting now. That's good. Sort of. Turn this up, and then hopefully it'll go. Oh, that's close enough. You know what? Got the zip ties around. Let's just zip tie it. And then hopefully the glue will do its work. Seems like I'm zip tying everything tonight. Maybe that's the future. Maybe we just get rid of bolts and just start zip tying. Right, there we go. Cool. Choppy scissors, as opposed to not choppy scissors. So while I don't recommend holding on your body posts with zip ties, you know, sometimes needs must. Have I got those equivalent heights? Close enough. Right, now the magic trick. So if you want to mark the right place for your drilling of your body, pop a dab of Loctite on the top of where you want your body posts, and then when you offer your body down on, you'll get 4 green marks that help you do it. Now, it only works if you manage to get your body on the right way, but that to me looks about right. And if not, they'll be in the right place, just off by 1 inch or so. Great. Close enough. And then have enough flex in your front body posts or your rear ones that if you screw up making a hole, it really don't matter. Right. Want to go fast. Sweet. 2 down, 2 to go. Now I think I've got the front one well off, so I'm going to redo that front one. So you just wipe the Loctite off, dab a bit more on, dab them on, and then Loctite on plastic just wipes off, so that's dead easy. So let's see if my rear posts went on properly. That's 1, that's 2, right, they're on. So that would not be it, that would be a terrible place to put them. Well, I've managed to screw that up, and they're a bit far forwards. Never mind. Just make a slightly bigger hole. That'll do. Yeah, because I've lowered the truck, it's completely changed the body post mounting holes. So yeah, this is going to be fun. There we go. That's better. Yeah, lowering the truck has severely raised it into the arches, so I'm going to have to chop the arches slightly. My Wi-Fi keeps dropping out. I don't know what's going on today. If it doesn't catch up, I might as well just end the stream. Oh no, it's catching up. Right, my main challenge at the moment is the layer of glue that's holding the shell together is so thick I can't get my body pins on the style of body posts that I've got. In fact, that one got pushed right through, so I'm going to have to move this annoying zip tie across and try and do that grub screw back up again. Oh, that'll be why. Grub screw had come out. Oh. So there's a simple way to deal with body posts that have got a bit of a lip on that get in your way, and that's just to chop the lip off. I'm getting the majority off it with scissors, sharp ones, and then I'll just run a blade round it to remove any excess. Are we back? Yeah, we're back. Yeah, I lost all of my viewers. Right, all I'm doing is trimming off the collar on the body posts because I want them to sit flat on the chassis. And then the front ones, I don't know what I'm going to do. Probably cut some of the glue out or something. But let's see if we can get some body pins on here now. Right. Through the holes. Body pin slides straight in, that's great. and sort of slides in on the back. Right, when it's at full extension, it's just going to rub on the chassis slightly. I think the wheels look awesome. I really hope they don't just explode tomorrow. I will remember to pack my other ones, my spare ones. Right. Get a body pin through there, and I can't get the last body pin through because that post is playing whack-a-mole. Every time I touch it, it drops down. So hopefully somewhere in this mess of a garage, I've got a self-tapping screw that I can pop on there, and that will hold that post in place. Yes, got one. So in this mess, can I find a screwdriver? Yes, I can. So I'm going to screw this through, get this body post on. Then my battery is at 12.6 volts, so I'm going to throw everything in the car and go and have a cup of tea and relax. Get this screw in on. The body post mount's just cracked in two. That's not what I needed. What do I do? Right, I'm going to have to resort to good old-fashioned bodged engineering. So let's have a look. We've got a reamer somewhere. Find the hole. The hole's out there. So I've started the hole off. I'm going to make sure. I'm going to cut those two zip ties off. I'm going to literally just screw this on. It's a self-tapping screw, but there's also a hole in there just to hold it steady. So I'm literally going to screw this post on, then hold it straight with zip ties is the plan. Get that screw to go in. Right, that screw's gone in enough to hold it on. Good old zip ties again. Just gonna pop some straight round to just put some tension on it and just hold it in place. I can guarantee you wouldn't get any scale points for this. Although if they'd ever seen one of my real off-roaders, or my car, or sometimes my BMX, or a lot of things that I bodge, then you know it's scale for me. Right. That body post is now held in place by zip ties and a screw, so it's got a bit of wobble, a bit of flex to match the truck, which is now low. It's got a lot of flex, it is super low, it is super girthy, and it has crazy 3D printed wheels. So this thing is light. It's yeah, it's a 2.5 kilo truck with a slammed body, flexi suspension. I'm going to have a lot of fun with it. Thank you very much, and I'll catch you next time.